Alright folks, today I bring you another example of dark environmental storytelling in the Walking Dead universe. If you're unfamiliar with the series, environmental storytelling is something that has been used in The Walking Dead since its inception. A technique where a series of objects or bodies will be laid out in a way that conveys a story to the viewer without explicitly stating what that story is. Today, I'm going to be exploring the horrors found inside the Pink Room in Season 4, Episode 11, titled Claimed. I'm going to structure this video by taking you through the story as it was first presented to us, before going back and attempting to piece together the evidence to figure out what happened here. Just a reminder, these videos aren't meant to convince you my interpretation is right, just to lay out the evidence and my thoughts, and present to you what I think to be the most likely scenario. So this is all just speculation. If you're enjoying this type of content, be sure to hit that like button and drop a sub to see more videos like this. Following the governor's attack on the prison, our group was scattered, forced to survive on the road, looting from house to house. Michonne had found Rick and Carl on her journeys, and together the three would take refuge in a somewhat secure home. Carl had been grieving the presumed death of Judith, and needing supplies, Michonne would take him out to scout the area to clear his head, while Rick stayed back, recovering from his injuries. Checking out a nearby house, it stands out as particularly clean and unlooted. Like, whoever was here just got up and left early on without even locking the door. Toiletries remain neatly displayed, and chairs are still tucked into the table. It's not what you would usually expect walking to an unlocked house in the apocalypse, but there appears to be no imminent danger, so the two continue their task. Scavenging through rooms, Michonne reveals to Carl she understands how he's feeling, as she too had lost someone very young in her life suddenly, her son Andre. Carl would overwhelm her with questions about this revelation, but she would agree to only answer one per room, and only if they find something useful in it. Carl would bring her a wrapped painting, thinking that's a good item for survival, I guess, and ask his question. A painting isn't exactly useful, but would at least go great with the others on the wall. You know, a dog, a sunflower, and oh, Jesus Christ. This is our first sign things may not be as they seem inside this house. Why the hell would this be painted? It appears to have originally been a nice art piece of a woman, with the horrifying scribbles added on after the fact. This appears to be the result of some sort of breakdown, as we can see the word no frantically written 3 times. What's even more curious, it was wrapped up neatly and placed against a door. Why would somebody paint this if they were leaving suddenly? It definitely matches the style of the other paintings on the wall, but certainly not the themes. Now, from an overall writing standpoint, this was clearly meant to foreshadow the evil nature of Terminus for the audience, as the woman appears very similar to Mary merely episodes before we meet her. But from an in-universe standpoint, I don't think it's related to Terminus at all. It's just too great a distance and would be really random for someone to just paint that. But with the gut feeling something isn't right, Michonne proceeds to the same eerie closed door the painting was propped up against, discovering a children's playroom. With all the talk of lost kids, seeing this room abandoned clearly has an effect on Michonne as she recalls her old life and her time with Andre. But her moment of reminiscing would be cut short, as in a neighboring room, she would discover the bodies of what would appear to be 5 children of varying ages. But they didn't die natural deaths, as each one appears to have a bullet wound in their heads, with blood on the surrounding pillows and walls. It's clear this happened suddenly and unexpectedly. One of the bodies is even holding a comic book, indicating they barely had a chance to look up before someone pulled the trigger. Now, this is an extremely puzzling scene. To me, none of these bodies look like adults. The 2 on the left bed look older than the others, but judging by their clothing, the comics, and the fact that they fit on a child's bed, I think these were teenagers at most. with the other two looking to be around 6 to maybe 8 years old. I find the body on the chair to be the strangest of the bunch. I notice she looks and dresses very similar to the woman in the painting, but again, to me, this just doesn't look like an adult's body. If this was the mother of the children and the same woman who made the painting, how would she have wrapped the painting up and left it against the door? It is possible there could be a second unseen door somewhere in these rooms, but going scene by scene, I did not see one. I will concede that this death in particular does look self-inflicted, at least from this specific shot, and the way the head is tilted, it's kinda hard to tell if there's an entry wound on the forehead, but we don't actually see a gun anywhere in the shot. And that seems like it would be a pretty important thing to at least linger on for a little bit. So, in my not-so-professional opinion, this was not self-inflicted, and the shooter was not among the bodies found. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The decaying of the bodies does make it pretty tough to tell the ages, but I'm gonna double down anyway and say these are all children. And if that is the case, what happened to the parents? Michonne would lie to Carl about what was inside, but judging by her face, he could already tell. The incident, although tragic, allowed Michonne and Carl to bond and open up to each other, continuing what would become a strong friendship. But what the hell happened here? Well, now I'm gonna go back to the beginning and try my best to piece together what I think the story is. But remember, there is very little information given on the exact events, so I may give a couple different scenarios as we go along. But regardless, they're all just speculation, albeit with evidence. So if you have another theory, please leave it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear. When the outbreak started, many people couldn't cope with the falling state of the world, one of which being a mother of 5 who struggled with her mental health as society collapsed around her. She was an artist pre-apocalypse and would paint pictures and display them on the wall for her family to enjoy. Now, I'm no housing expert, but this home seems rather large for a single income family with that many children, so I believe it's possible the mother made a living by selling art from home while her husband went to work in the days, possibly in the city. Wherever it was, he would not make it home when the dead began walking, leaving the mother to care for her family alone. Now, it's entirely possible these weren't all her children. We only really see the name Mei Mei around the room. Maybe she took a few in as things were going bad when their parents didn't come home. But if that were the case, I think the house wouldn't be looking as pristine, instead resembling more of a refugee camp. I think the more likely scenario, this was a family with 5 kids, and they were just all in the same room for safety. But regardless of where they came from, 5 kids were being cared for by one person at the end of the world, and this would clearly take a toll on her. As mentioned, the house is in pristine condition, presumably still full of supplies, so I'm led to believe this tragic incident occurred extremely early on into the outbreak, possibly as little as a few days in. The mother, realizing her husband was not coming back, would quickly descend into a state of depression and fear. The dead were surrounding her neighborhood, and as far as she could tell, it was only a matter of time before the end came for them as well. She would contemplate what was best for them. Would they have to grow up in this brutal world, or would they be ripped apart? Neither seemed like an acceptable option. The thought of them dying slowly and painfully would eat away at her, before she would come to the conclusion in her frantic state, ending their lives now would be best for them. 4 lie in the bed, some sleeping, some reading, while one sits in a chair by the window, looking out at the street she used to play on. And in what the mother thought was mercy at the time, she would shoot all 5 in quick succession, with the final child being the one on the chair, swinging around to see the horrors her mom committed, before joining in the same fate as her siblings. Realizing she was now all alone, the guilt would begin to set in. Maybe she thought a bullet to the head was too good a fate for her, she killed her children merely days after the dead rose. Whether it was with good intentions or not, she would begin to see herself as a monster, and her art would soon reflect that. Alternatively, I did have the thought this painting could have been depicting the daughter in the chair, like maybe she was painting it as some sort of memorial, but once finished, would suffer some sort of breakdown and defile it. But it'd be kinda strange only to paint a picture of one of the children, so I still subscribe to the theory this depicts the mother and her mental state at the time. Regardless of its origins, she would prop the painting up against the same door she committed the atrocities. If her husband were to return, or even another passerby were to come in, they would know what she did. And with that, she would open her front door and walk into the wasteland with no supplies or weapons, accepting whatever fate would befall her. Alternatively, I could be completely wrong about this body also being a child. Maybe it is the mother, and her story ends with the taking of her own life. But again, to me, this looks like a child's body. We don't see the gun that committed the crime, and the painting was propped up on, from what we can tell, the only door accessing the room. We may not know exactly what happened here, but we do know why it happened. Somebody didn't want their family to meet a painful end, so they put them down quickly and suddenly so they wouldn't suffer. Now, this is an extremely dark story of what happens when a person's fears get the best of them at the end of the world. I've seen many great theories on what could have happened here. Some say the mother could have suffered from schizophrenia, judging by the paintings, but I'm not very educated in that subject, so I won't speak to it. But I do strongly believe mental health was a factor here. Others think the two bodies on the left bed were adults, and to be honest, I had to really watch this scene to come to a decision. But I do think these are kids based off their clothing, albeit probably in their teens. This whole scenario reminds me of the Hush story from season 6, with the weight of the world taking its toll on a parent. But I think this particular scene was inspired by issue 60 of the comic, where Morgan discovers a similar scene, but here it's a lot more cut and dry as you see the mother with a shotgun blast to the head, and the father with the same thing, but clearly self-inflicted. These types of scenes are what make this world feel scary and hopeless. The early days were a deadly time, and this form of environmental storytelling allows us to take a glimpse at that. This is a dead, brutal world, and these scenes reflect that well. But that's going to be it for me today, folks. Again, if you have an alternate theory of what could have happened here, please let me know in the comments down below. Maybe you think there's some evidence I missed. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And feel free to leave suggestions for future videos down below as well. Thanks for watching, folks.